Let's Get To presents Go Go Astros, a focus on H-Town hardball.
Good morning, Astros fans. It is Monday morning. It is October 11th, and the Astros, well, we got to have a very it's the Go Astros podcast. And James, we got to have a very enjoyable weekend because while other teams were sweating and going through anxiety, we got to answer some important questions like, could the Guardians and Rays play a game in which no one scored? Is Cardinals Devil Magic dead? And how central is it when an umpire rubs a player's ears?
I'm sorry, I was just loading up for today's episode. Yeah, that was maybe one of the weirdest things I've ever. I mean, I knew they were going to do it, but yeah, and I don't know what you think. I don't think Buck Showalter thought that. I think he was freezing the kicker, to use a football analogy.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely, and I don't know. Do ears sweat? I sweat a lot, but I don't think I ever sweat through my ears. But
I've never
Joe
seen
Musgrove has all the sweat glands there.
And it looked like I had just finished watching the new Chucky TV show. His ears looked as rubbery as Chucky's does. I was like, this is bizarre. I'll be honest, I was sort of hoping he had, so that way we could be like, whoa. Because I don't think he did a full heel turn, but he's definitely been misinterpreted as having done a full heel turn when it came to the Astros.
Yeah, he was certainly in the news beforehand, and it's a story I mostly ignored because I just don't care. Other than I do want to go back and look at the footage now from the 10th inning of Game 5 of the ALCS, where he had of the World Series in 2017, where he shut down the Dodgers, our one pitcher who could do so, and got the win. How much were his ears sweating? Was he just full out sprinkling out his ears there? Facing down in the biggest inning of his career. Certainly,
I think this needs to be a new segment on the show. How much ear sweat?
I don't know. I played football, so that was covered up by the helmet. So if I had ear sweat, and if that was an advantage, I certainly wasn't able to take advantage of it. So it is.
I definitely don't ear sweat when I'm nervous. So I don't know. It's weird. I guess when I'm being super competitive, I do, so maybe it's a thing, man. Maybe you and I are just not competitive enough.
Yeah, it is certainly the not the thing we were going to be talking about 15 hours ago yet. No. Part of the magic of the postseason, right, is that we all focus on, these one moments that are weird and odd, and
we do plan the show. Like, people should know that we do plan the show. It's just sometimes those plans got to get tossed, like Buck Showalter wanted Musgrove to get.
Yeah, you have to adjust, as with many things in life. One thing we did plan to talk about today, and one thing he said, I think, quote you in an offline message you sent me. Why is everyone pissing down their legs about the Mariners? Why is everyone scared of this team? We're both, I think, puzzled by this.
Puzzled. First of all, I would always use the word concerned. I mean, I think afraid of is such a weird word. And maybe given my past and having had someone throw a hand grenade at me, afraid is relative. When we had talked about this offline, and I even ran a poll on my Facebook and on my Twitter, and everybody in the poll said that they were most concerned about facing the Blue Jays. So then the Blue Jays get eliminated, and all of a sudden we throw out that we actually had a better, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we had a better record against them this year than we did last year when they made their run at the end. Look, it's playoff baseball. We all know everything can happen, but of all the teams that we have a large sample size against, it's this one, and that sample size is very much in the Astros' favor.
The most playoff-like games the Astros played this year were the 3 games against the Mariners coming out of the All-Star break after they had the doubleheader against the Yankees. So they got a bum hand by the schedule. They swept the doubleheader, and they went up there to sold out. And this was after the Mariners had a 14-game win streak going into the postseason.
Remember, they called it their World Series. Their fans called it their World Series.
And I guess it is. On the other hand, didn't go well for them in their World Series because they got swept. And can we take a lot out of that? No, other than it speaks to two things we know about the Astros team. One is they're a pretty good baseball team. They won 106 games this year. And number two, they've been in a lot of intense environments, and they're not fazed by much of anything at this point. And so I know it'll be a very raucous crowd on Saturday in Seattle, no matter what the series stands. But I don't think that'll have much effect on Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman. I mean, Jeremy Pena's a rookie, but he seems to be, one of the most mature guys on the team. I'm not worried about this.
Exactly. I mean, again, if you take out the acknowledgement that baseball is weird and playoff baseball is weirder, I'm not losing much sleep over this particular team. I don't think it makes me cocky. I think it just means I understand precedent and how that's gone. And, when that Blue Jays lineup, look, first of all, Brian, people should take what I say with a grain of salt. I had Mets Blue Jays in the World Series, if you'll remember, back in May. So I don't know anything about this game, but it does seem like they don't have the lineup the Blue Jays have. They don't have the pitching as like the Rays or some of these other teams or the Guardians have. It seems to me like this is the best matchup of the three possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly see. Oh, we saw this with the Guardians, right? That they gave up 1 run over 24 innings of baseball. That's really impressive. The Rays aren't as good a hitting team as the Astros. They're down this year, but still 1 run over 24 innings, really impressive, and fits with kind of what we thought about the Guardians, right? Is that they don't have a lot of power. They may not be able to get a bunch of runs together, but they pitch their way to the AL Central title, and they pitch their way. If they don't let the Yankees score a run, and the Yankees kind of have a one-man offense. But again, that's our preview of the other sort of here.
Who should never see a pitch, right?
The Yankees season really sort of went with Anthony Rizzo. When Anthony Rizzo was in and healthy, they had more good hitters and that could work. When they didn't, they had Aaron Judge, and he's really good, but he was the Mike Trout of the Yankees during a particular period.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So the Mariners they're a team that's about average offensively. And as much as Julio Rodriguez is hyped, and with good reason, both Yordan Alvarez and Jose Altuve were better hitters and much better hitters this season than Julio Rodriguez. The advantages exist heavily with the Astros in the series.
Was Julio Rodriguez? I know we have other stuff, but was Julio Rodriguez considered? Because I'm just looking at obviously, I went to film school. Numbers better, but even like the run differential, which is one of the ones I look at heavily in the Astros' favor. Mm-hmm. But was J-Rod? Was he their best player?
Yes.
Okay, so not even. And so it's hard to argue. We could say 5 guys were our best player if we wanted to really get into the weeds. Okay.
Yeah. And so they had decent numbers decent numbers ahead of sort of scouts' expectations in center field, and hit really well. Yordan Alvarez, the only reason he's not the best hitter in baseball is that Aaron Judge had an unworldly season.
Yeah.
So that's, we start from the stars. At the bottom of the lineups, they're pretty similar. But if you look at the top, again, it's a big advantage to the Astros that keeps sort of expanding as you go from like the 4th best player, the 5th best, as you sort of go up the scale to each better player. The Astros keep having more and more advantage over the Mariners. They also get Justin Verlander in game 1. I know that the Mariners have momentum, and I know they are confident, and I know they have all these psychological things which we apply one way. But I still believe the momentum is your next day starting pitcher, and we have the best pitcher in the American League going tomorrow.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the one thing that I was talking with our co-host about, Andy, who's not here today, obviously. He's scouting out. He's our advanced scout for today. But no, we could actually decide which of our 4 top guys could really be a game 1 starter for many, many other teams. And the fact is, no matter how you slice it, the Mariners are not going to be able to throw their number 1 guy tomorrow. And if they do, I think you pointed us out online that he would be on short rest, and he's not very good on short rest. So the advantages, I think, do line up with just how strong our starting pitching staff is. with Justin Verlander at the top of that rotation.
Yeah, he was, likely to win the American League Cy Young Award. He led the American League in ERA. He is someone who has succeeded at this level on many occasions. So again, I guess the Mariners have momentum, and they have, all these sort of psychological constructs that we don't apply evil. We don't sort of apply evenly because, of course, we weren't, thinking the national people, they weren't thinking about the Astros this week. I'd rather
have a question for you though, because you're our numbers guy, and I saw this online. I think I sent you the tweet where there was the proposal of Lance's numbers are much better at home, Fromber's are much better on the road. Do you just go ahead and start Lance in game 2 and Fromber in game 3? Where do you sit with all that?
I mean, it's too short of a sample on a lot of that stuff for me to really put a lot of stake into it. I will say this is a better matchup for Fromber playing against the Mariners and the Blue Jays, because the Blue Jays are so right-handed, and the Mariners have usually 3 left-handed hitters in their starting lineup. They'll probably platoon one of them, probably Jared Kelenic, in left, but it's a better matchup therefore for Fromber here. But I think one thing to note here is that Fromber was, Verlander led the American League in a lot of different categories. The one category Fromber led the American League in fewest home runs given up per 9 innings. And this is, to me, one of the big advantages in this series is that offensively, the Astros hit more home runs than the Mariners, about 20 more this season. But pitching-wise, the Astros gave up the second fewest home runs in baseball. The Mariners gave up, I believe it's the 18th most. There's a 52 home run difference on what they've given up this season. To me, that's something I'm looking at in particular as a really big advantage for the Astros.
Yeah, I mean, it does, again, going back to the run differential thing, the ability to pop one out of the ballpark, but especially in modern baseball, to not is a much bigger deal. And even JV has changed the way he pitches to a degree where, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like he gave up way fewer home runs this year than he had in previous seasons.
That is correct. And he was, I think in 2019, he was among the league leaders in home runs given up.
Yeah, it was like,
because he won the Cy Young that year.
Yeah.
He was,
because they were all solo home runs. Like, I guess he bore down more when there was somebody on. But yeah, and I think that's the other thing too is Fromber being such a ground ball pitcher. I think it makes everybody on the team better. I think guys always talk about having better offensive days when they feel like they're also involved in the game on the field. So I don't know how much of that matters, but it does seem like, again, those are truly 2 guys that could be a number 1 starter on anybody else's team today.
And I can even give you some numbers on that because I'm the numbers guy.
Please.
But Baseball Savant not only does outs above average for each fielder, but they're also able to look at what the fielding was like behind each pitcher. 3rd best defense, 3rd best outs above average of any starter in Major League Baseball this year, Fromber Valdez. And so this may be part of the, guys say they like when people, work fast and get lots of ground balls because they're sort of on their toes and they're more intense and into it. We'd expect that in general in a playoff game, no matter what here, but I think it could be, again, lots of ground balls, lots of chances for the Astros, excellent defense, particularly Jeremy Pena at shortstop, Gold Glove candidate, and Jeremy Pena at shortstop, to gobble up a lot of balls, do lots of fun stuff in the shift, make lots of plays at second base.
R.I.P. the shift, right? This is the shift's farewell.
Last chance to watch the shift here.
Yeah.
You listen to the Bases Loaded podcast put out by the MLB.com, some of their savant guys, some of their baseball savant guys. And they were trying to predict who is the last batter who will face the shift. Their prediction was Max Muncy, and if that happens, say against Ryan Presley, I'd be very happy with that.
I'd be very happy with that too. Mm-hmm. I'll take it.
Another ground ball into the shift would be, I'd be in favor of that. One of the big keys to this series, or I guess if we look back to how Dusty Baker managed the Astros in the 2021 playoffs, is he had an extremely quick hook. He relied on his bullpen, and while that was a worrisome strategy based on how the bullpen had performed during the season, it worked out pretty well during the playoffs. Starters didn't go long. He relied on his bullpen. They got lots of innings. It looked more like a modern baseball team. This season, the Astros have gotten more innings from their starters. Part of that is having the 6-man rotation meant they were one down in the bullpen for most teams, and they wanted to get length out of that. Part of that was I think that their starters are really good, and they didn't fear them going for an extra few batters. They almost always wanted to get them up to right around 100 pitches and often let them start innings in like high pitch counts. Playoff baseball usually calls for more bullpens. There's usually more rest days to make that work. How do you think Dusty's going to play it when it comes to starters?
Well, it's weird because it's this year it's so different from last year because it's strength on strength. We have the best starting rotation, I think, and the best bullpen. One of the things I think you'll see with particularly when JV and Fromber pitch, I think they will go longer. And I think because that way you at least limit the number of views that the opposition has on that bullpen. So that way, when they're seeing them for the third time in a series, you always see that it seems like these games always get higher scoring the longer the series goes on. And you can mitigate some of that by reducing how many times they see Ryan Presley or how many times they see Stanek. What I think is going to be interesting too is one of the benefits of Presley's injury was that Montero closed games and Neris obviously closed games. You could really see a very interesting deployment based on situation as opposed to based on who gets the save. My question for you though is, where do those decisions come from? Are they coming from Dusty, or do they come from the sort of baseball operations people? I mean, or do we even really know how that works?
I think the better answer is we don't really know how that works. I think in the end, Dusty's the one making the decision in the dugout. Now, teams in general, but specifically in the postseason, map out a variety of sort of game plans on how to use their pitching staff, how to use their bullpen, particularly based on who's available that day. The good news is for the first 3 games, it's game 1 day off, game 2 day off, game 3. They'll have rest for all of their top arms to use them if they want it. Like I said, you may want to spread it out because you had so many good arms in the bullpen, and you're going to have to, you may not want Brian Abreu's first playoff appearance to be in a game 4 elimination game in Seattle.
Right.
Able to get him in before that. On the other hand, it's driven by, the other thing, of course, matters is the game state, right? If it's 8-1 tomorrow in the 9th, I'd love to see Brian Abreu pitch the 9th rather than one of the, rather than Montero, Presley, or Neris. Because again, we've seen this. Actually, Neris has never been in the playoffs either, so he would be actually the other candidate to start here, though he'll be.
Poor Phillies.
Yeah, well, not so much this week. So.
Right, I guess not. Yeah, they got off the schneid, and now they're running.
Yeah. So again, now is that a big deal? It's not nothing, right? But it's also something that talent wins out. These guys have pitched a lot, and again, if they really got nervous playing baseball, they probably would have cowered behind some minor league heckler back in low A ball, right?
Right. Well, but I do think it pays dividends, like you said. I do think experience starts to play out and starts to matter when, for example, we have the weird schedule where it's a back-to-back games in 2 different cities. Like, I feel like that's automatically advantage Astros because they've not done that before, but they've experienced so much more of that environment before. And, I think I question some of the decisions the Mariners have made financially this season, committing a lot of money to 2 different players, but they're on a trajectory to be there, to be in the playoffs for a while if they keep it up. And they're going to perform better likely 3 years into this thing than they are this year. So I do think getting those guys, like you said, exposure early in the series, if it does it all work. I think the other thing, to your point, because the bullpen is top to bottom so strong, you can throw Abreu in a 5-1 game if you wanted to and feel pretty okay about it, versus last year we would have seen Presley in an 8-1 game.
Yeah. And, certainly want to use your top guys and you want to, get them the most innings. At the same point, you have 5 really good sort of arms in the bullpen. And you have a lot of sort of, you can have a lot of confidence in them. That being said, the Mariners are a more left-handed team than most teams. They have batted in Toronto. They batted Adam Frazier and J.P. Crawford back-to-back, who are 2 left-handed. hitters, it's the question of, will we see Will Smith in a like fifth or sixth inning scenario? Will he get more? Will he get more run because of the team they're facing and the matchup? And I think that's possible. The good news is, lots of playoff experience for Will Smith. The bad news is clearly not as good this season. Improved with the Astros, but clearly not as good this season as the other five arms of the bullpen.
Did he trend up? I mean, he was trending up as the season ended. Was that enough for you? And then also, it seems like a lot of our guys have good reverse splits anyway. So to quote Billy Bean, I don't care about righty lefty. I mean, where do you sit with those two pieces of sort of information?
If it were me, I would just go with the best arms. And Smith would be someone in low leverage situations. I'm not sure Dusty will play it that way.
Yeah, I mean, Dusty is definitely, yeah. Well, but again, I think Will Smith, I mean, even just his last outing where he sort of walked the bases loaded and then struck out the next three guys, it was almost like he was testing himself just to see how he could do in a high leverage situation. I don't know. I think they drafted him for a reason. I don't think it was, we saw it happen with Odorizzi going to Atlanta, but I think it was definitely a reason that they traded for Will Smith.
Yeah, Odorizzi actually got a little bit worse when he went to Atlanta, and Smith got better when he came to Houston, which speaks well, by the way, in small sample, but it speaks well to Houston's pitching development because, Atlanta, as we unfortunately know too well, pretty good franchise. And they know a lot about what they're doing, and if they could have figured out Will Smith, they could have, right? So again,
I'm looking at my 90 Central Division pennant that's just out of the shot.
Okay.
And just thinking about how it should have been more had it not been for a couple of those Atlanta teams.
Or one of my worst public incidents in the Tony Eusebio, Walt Weiss ball. But hey, the nice thing about being an Astros fan in the 2020s is they have won five straight division series. They've won the opening game of all of these. Some of that is, hey, the odds of baseball, you win a few coin flips. On the other hand, good team, good players. What are you envisioning for tomorrow's game?
Well, I think Justin Verlander, is still on a mission to make a statement. And I think, we talk about baseball and some of the emotional side of the game and how some of it does work and some of it doesn't. But I think JV is very motivated by things like that. And I think when he comes out, he's very, very focused. I do believe the Astros take tomorrow's game. And then I can actually see taking game 2, maybe not 3, but winning 4, because I do think that you see the possibility of the Mariners losing game 1. It's a weird start time that they're not used to. And I could see them really going into a shell and all of a sudden getting very in their head about the season. Or the opposite mental part of it is being like, well, isn't it so cool to be here? Well, by the time you realize it's cool, it's not just more than it'd be cooler to not just be more than just there. You're out of the series. So I really do feel like the Astros will take game 1 tomorrow. I'm a little worried about rust, but I'm sure they figured out how to mitigate that in these 5 or 6 days they were off.
Yeah, it'll be one of the more interesting things to look at. This is the first time under this format where you get 5 days off, as opposed to, I think it was like 3 days off during the wild card game, single game series. And that's one of the things I have concerns about as part of this format here, is it doesn't work as well as baseball, giving buys as it does in football. It's a great thing. In baseball, it's sort of very different. So we'll see sort of how that works. But again, the big advantage, the two big advantages for the Astros tomorrow is they have Justin Verlander going, and he's a better pitcher than anybody. Logan Gilbert's a fine pitcher, but he's anybody. He's not as good as Justin Verlander.
His mom disagrees, Brian.
I don't want to say he's just a guy, right? He's got a much better record than that, right?
Yeah.
But Justin
Verlander,
he's
their third option.
Yeah. There's a reason he didn't start game 1 or game 2. I expect Luis Castillo in game 2, and then it would be 3 days of rest for him to pitch it, for Castillo to pitch in game 5. But I think they would go with, again, I think they would go with that if they needed to at the end. The Mariners have a deep rotation. They have 4 very good starters who will pitch. So I expect it to be a low scoring series. Part of that is the Mariners were right about league average in their run scoring. They were not a high average batting average team. They were a team that strike out a lot. The Astros were second best in strikeout rate among their pitchers and second best in batting average allowed. So it could be a low hit series. But again, I think one of the big keys is home runs. If the Astros can do that and keep the Mariners from hitting home runs, which they do a little better than, I think they were 10th best in the majors at hitting home runs. So it's one of their strengths. Another big key in this series, one area where the Mariners do have an advantage, they were one of the top teams in baseball in taking walks. The Astros had an excellent pitching staff with excellent results, but one area where they were decidedly mid-level is in allowing walks.
Right.
So can they keep the Mariners can they force them to hit the ball? If they do that, they don't get a lot of singles, and the Astros prevent a lot of singles.
Right. And I think too, their ability to draw walks is really going to be one of the areas where we're going to see if the stage is affecting them. Because if you go up there, high heart rate, you have the pressure to make something happen, you tend to be less patient. It's why I'll put Bregman up against anybody as far as having a steady heartbeat in those situations. We've seen it in 2017. We've seen it nonstop since then. So yeah, I really do feel like I can see Astros in 4. I think you could make the argument, looking ahead a little bit, if the Yankees do get through the Guardians, and I actually don't think they will, I could see the Mariners, if it's between the Mariners, this being the tougher matchup of the two, if the Astros and Yankees do in fact meet up. But I still kind of feel Astros in 4 is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go here. I think your sort of pattern makes sense. The Astros win 2 at home, lose game 3, win game 4. But as you know, as I know, as probably we all should know here, right? The playoffs are a crapshoot. Billy Beane was right about that, and they're unpredictable. So at least Fangraphs has the Astros as 58% favorite to win, which is one of the better odds. It's like better than the Braves have against the Phillies, which sort of surprised me. But I think it speaks to both, hey, this is a really good team, and the playoffs are a crapshoot. 42% odds of losing are anxiety-inducing.
Well, and it's to your point too. I also look at 538 a lot, and they have the Astros as a 67% favorite to win it. So no matter how you slice it, they are an overwhelming favorite to win this series.
Indeed, and that means, well, it won't mean a whole lot, sort of what the computers say when the actual pitches start being thrown.
Right.
Other than it's based on a really important insight. The Astros are a good baseball team that has lots of good players. We've seen that through the first 162 games of the season, and we hope to see it again through the next 3 to 5 games and more. So with that, we thank everybody here. I'll do a little self-plug here and note that on my Substack, orangefire.substack.com, I'll be posting my ALDS preview a little later this afternoon. So please pay attention for that.
Everyone should be checking that out.
So, and I'll try to do analysis of every game. Not as thorough as this article here, but try to look at some of the important stuff going on here. And we will be back. And James, we will be back more frequently during the playoffs here as what's going on here, day to day more than week to week.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to, again, I think this is going to be a long playoff run. I will say again, as I pointed out, I did have Jays Mets in the World Series, which tells you what I know about baseball, but still I'm looking forward to, this is the fun time of year. And if it's easy to get caught up in the crap talking. It's easy to get caught up in all of the negativity that comes with it. But no matter what, we have now a minuscule amount of baseball games left till the void. So I suggest enjoying every single pitch.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And we will enjoy game 1 tomorrow and the rest of these, and be back very soon to talk to you about what actually happened, instead of previewing, to reviewing what's happened. So we thank everyone, and we will be back soon.
And Go Astros, everybody.